Let's be honest, is there anything worse than that queasy, awful feeling of nausea? I think we've all been there. But have you ever stopped to think about what is actually going on inside your body when that happens? It turns out it's this fascinating, complex alarm system. So let's dive in and decode exactly what signals our bodies are trying to send us. Okay, so the first and most important thing to get right off the bat is this. Nausea is not a disease, it's a symptom. You have to think of it like a fire alarm. It's the signal that something's off, but it's not the fire itself. It's simply that sensation that you might need to vomit. And that brings up a really critical distinction. Nausea is the sensation, that horrible feeling. Vomiting, on the other hand, is the physical action that sometimes follows. They're definitely partners in crime, but they are two totally separate things, a feeling and an action. So where does this all even start? You might think it's your stomach, right? But the real command center, the one pulling all the strings, is actually in your brain. Let's take a look at how this whole alarm system is put together. That's right. Your brain literally has what's called a vomiting center, and its job is to listen for alarm signals coming in from all over your body. It's constantly monitoring for distress calls that might mean it's time to, well, hit the big red eject button. So how does the brain get these signals? Well, there are four main phone lines that connect directly to this control center. A call can come from your stomach. Maybe you ate something that didn't agree with you. It can come from your inner ear, which controls your sense of balance. A signal can also get triggered by your bloodstream if it detects toxins or certain drugs. And, get this, it can even come from the higher level parts of your brain, triggered by things like intense stress or seeing something gruesome. Okay, so that's the science, but how does this all play out in the real world? Let's unpack two classic triggers that use completely different pathways to ring that alarm bell in your brain. Yes, motion sickness, the absolute bane of every family road trip and boat ride. This is a perfect example of your brain just getting totally confused by conflicting reports from its team on the ground. So here's the problem in a nutshell. Your senses are sending two completely different messages to headquarters. Your eyes are telling your brain, hey, everything's cool, we're just sitting still looking at this book. But at the same time, your inner ear is screaming, whoa, we're moving, we're turning, we're bouncing all over the place. Your brain gets these two conflicting reports, and its response is basically confusion. And that confusion triggers the nausea alarm. All right, let's switch gears from a sensory mismatch to more of a chemical alert. A lot of different medications can cause nausea, and they do it by directly poking that control center in the brain. Take opioids, for instance. Get this, a staggering 25 to 30% of people feel nauseous when they first start taking them. This happens because the drug molecules floating around in the bloodstream directly stimulate what's called the chemoreceptor trigger zone, which is basically the part of your brain that's constantly sniffing your blood for any unusual or potentially toxic chemicals. And it's not just opioids. A whole range of common stuff can have this effect. Antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, even nicotine and alcohol. In every case, your brain detects these chemicals in your blood and pretty much thinks, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't belong here, and sounds the alarm. So the big question is, what can we actually do when that alarm bell starts ringing? The good news is, we're not helpless. We've got a whole toolkit of strategies we can use to manage it. Let's walk through some of the most practical steps. You know, the first line of defense is often the simplest. Before even thinking about medication, these simple measures can be absolute game changers. Staying hydrated, eating small snacks instead of big meals, and just avoiding strong smells can make a huge difference. Sometimes even just getting other pain under control can relieve the nausea it was causing. And for that very specific problem of motion sickness, prevention is everything. All of these steps are designed to reduce that sensory conflict we talked about. Focusing on the horizon helps your eyes and your inner ear finally get back on the same page. And sitting where there's less motion, like the front seat of a car, and getting fresh air, it all helps calm the system down. Now, when medication is needed, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, which is pretty cool when you think about it. Different drugs work by blocking different signal pathways. So, for example, the signals for motion sickness use specific chemical messengers in the brain. Antihistamines work because they're designed to block those specific messages. But if the problem is a slow, full stomach, you'd use a totally different kind of drug. The key takeaway here is that the most effective treatment is all about matching the right drug to the right trigger. Okay, let's pause for a second because this next part is really, really important. While most nausea is temporary and not a big deal, sometimes it can be a sign of something more serious. We need to talk about the red flags you should never, ever ignore. This is the question we all need to be able to answer, right? How do you know when you can just power through it at home versus when it's really time to call a doctor? All right, let's be crystal clear here. If you ever see blood in your vomit, and that can look bright red or even like coffee grounds, that's an immediate call to a doctor. Same thing goes for severe abdominal pain, any signs of dehydration like feeling dizzy or having a really dry mouth, losing a lot of weight without trying, or if you're vomiting so much that you can't keep any liquids down for more than about 8 hours. These are your body's most urgent signals. Don't ignore them. So, to wrap this all up, the next time you feel that familiar, awful wave of nausea, try to think of it a little differently. It's not just some random, miserable feeling that's happening to you, it's a highly sophisticated signal from your body's central command. The real question is, what is your body trying to tell you?